you, Mike.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Busy Living Sober with Elizabeth Chance. It is episode 355, double nickels, 355. And I am so excited because I have Pete Sousa and Michael Sousa on today's show. Love these guys, known them forever. But before I go into that, let me just do a shout out to SoberLink. Getting sober is a lifestyle change, and sometimes a little technology can help. Imagine a breathalyzer that works like a habit tracker for sobriety. SoberLink helps you replace bad habits with healthy ones. Weighing less than a pound and as compact as sunglass case, SoberLink devices have built-in facial recognition, tamper detection, and advanced reporting, which is a fancy way to say it'll keep you honest. On top of that, results are sent instantly to loved ones to help you stay accountable. I've been a recovery coach for a long time, and I really can't think of a better tool to help people rebuild confidence and trust. Go after your goals. Visit www.soberlink.com/BLS for Busy Living Sober to sign up and receive $50 off your device. Thank you, SoberLink. They didn't even have those when we were getting sober, did they, Mike?
Okay, but now that begs a question because I'm super curious now. So
Okay.
SoberLink is like a breathalyzer, like that. If
Yeah.
I can't stop drinking, I'll use it, and like Biz is like my partner. Like okay, Pete.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Because, so think about it. If you're going through a divorce and you don't trust because how many people believed you when you said you weren't drunk? And, with our crazy behaviors, they still think sometimes we're drunk. But they're like, nah, sorry, I'm just saying.
It's really a cool concept for sure.
So
Yeah.
when you're in court or you're going through, or you have something going on with a loved one, you want to be able to be like, yeah, I'm legit. And the nice thing about it, because we know that so many people can give fake urine or do whatever, it's got facial recognition. It knows that it's you. So it's amazing. I love it.
It's pretty awesome too. It goes hand in hand with like if you're working some kind of a program, because like you said, we know that we haven't drank. But like, does somebody who you burnt your whole life, do they know? No. So it's good to be like, look here, this.
Right.
Yeah.
I got a couple sponsees I might want to gift it to.
I know. Yeah.
It's an amazing, and I love it. And they're trying to get rid of the stigma associated with addiction, which, I've always wanted to do. That's what Busy Living Sober has always been about. Because I've learned now, almost 17 years into this, that, I started that Sober Not Ashamed. And I think it's because I had so much shame that I wanted to be like, look, I'm sober, not ashamed, but I'm really so much shame.
I love, that it's one of your North Stars, right, is about open and honest communication around sobriety. And I just, I know that my children are being raised in that type of an environment. There's a dialogue, they know, like, and it's great. And I think that it's really spreading too. I think there's more and more acceptance and understanding. And it's huge. Like, I think that, the shame engulfed my parents forever and me, and now I can see there's a total shift, so it's really, I think it's a great message to get out there, Busy, really. I mean, it's absolutely, it's a great mission to have.
Well, so Busy got the Sober Not Ashamed t-shirts. This is back in 2013. She got them made at Wayne Sporting Goods.
Yep.
They were the best, like the coolest, like best thread you could have gotten. It probably cost like who knows how much money, right? They were super nice. And Kevin saw that I had one, Michael, and he was like, I want that. And he wore it to play. There's pictures of him playing in this Sober Not Ashamed t-shirt that I sent to that Biz, I just sent to her maybe a couple days ago, last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is
cool. He had the same mindset. What, Mike?
Who is this Kevin you speak of?
I know this Kevin. Well, I want to go back. I want to start. And I want to say, you mentioned something that is really, I think, important. And it's like our parents never talked about anybody being an addict. It was never talked about. Like, nobody said, oh, by the way, your grandmother, your grandfather, your great uncle, your cousin, somebody in the family has this thing called alcoholism. And, before you go and you pick up that drink, maybe you should know that you could maybe have it. Was that ever talked about?
I would say it was, because my mom, but it was which, Mike, should we do the disclaimer? Mom, you're the best mom ever. We love you to death. And
We, we
I
love you,
love
Mom.
your mom. I
Yeah,
love your
she's the
mom,
best.
and I follow
She's the
your
best.
mom, and your mom is the best. And we
So
all, and I truly believe Maria Shriver, I'm just going to throw this out there. Maria Shriver just said, like, if a mom gets up in the morning and does her very best that she can do, she's an amazing mom. And I know your mom's an amazing mom.
props
So
to
we're
that.
going to throwing that out there. And
Thank you,
fellow
100%.
moms,
But this is interesting, Busy, because what Peter's going to share is, children being raised in the same house with a slightly different perspective than
Yeah.
I.
Oh, totally.
So
My siblings and I have totally different perspective. Go on, Pete.
no, I can remember, like, and it was specifically, I believe that it was after nights that my dad would have maybe gone a little extra. And I can remember her like talking to me the next morning, being like, your father has a drinking problem. And you have a drinking problem. Probably, you're predisposed. It was just kind of like, and as a kid, I was like, well, what? I was like a real little kid. And I can remember taking a sip of beer when they would be like, hey, go get a beer from downstairs. And I would take a sip. I was like in like 5 or 6 or whatever, how old. And mom would be like, Mike, she'd be like, I see your lips around the top of this. Like you took a sip. Like you know that this is bad for you. So I was kind of, as much as you could be, it never like penetrated. But yeah, there was a little bit of not like thorough healthy education, but I was definitely
it was not like, listen, we have, we had this in our family and it runs deep, like it was more so in like your father's side, or like, it wasn't educational. And it was not, and my father never talked about it. I mean, my father was not a deep conversationalist with us. So but he showed up, he was a really, he did the best he could, really, really solid effort.
But that's really important that Mike mentions that, because we had alcoholism, the old saying, alcohol didn't run in my family, it galloped, and that's my dad's side. It was everywhere. And I'm telling you, he never said one thing about it. I remember his sister died from drinking herself to death. And it was sort of like talked about, right, Mike?
We're like, how did she die? Like, she was not feel like what? And then mom's like, we found bottles of vodka under the sofa. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. There's okay.
But it's so interesting because it was used in such a deflammatory way, right? It was like kind of like, oh my God, they're an alcoholic.
Yes.
And it
100%.
wasn't like something that you could get better from, right? It was just you had a moral problem, you were a bad person and all that. So the listeners that don't personally know you guys, how far apart are you two in age, and how much older was Kevin than you, Mike?
So Kevin's 2 years older than me. And Peter is 1 year younger.
I'm probably 4 years younger, although Mike looks so good. Sometimes he likes playing that game, like at the 7-Eleven. The woman will be like, hey, all right, 7:42, you guys. And I'm like, who do you think is older?
Are you guys twins? I'm like, look, I'm sober. I work on myself. Vanity plays into this, I heard a podcast about pretty on the outside, messy on the inside, right? Somebody's house. Did you guys clean up in there yet? A couple of podcasts ago, you're talking about that that cluttered home, Busy. Jesus.
Because it was for so long.
Totally.
It was all about, we were raised in these houses, we were raised in an area that's, we were blessed beyond blessed, right? We were so lucky, as much as we're like, oh my gosh, we had to go through all this hard stuff, but we had no idea what hard stuff really was.
No.
And we very privileged, and they sometimes say that we're like, it's hardest for us to get sober, right? Because we are so lucky, right?
Yeah.
We're so blessed beyond blessed. And having this shame that our parents raised us with, and coming out and saying, you know what, all right, the gig's up, I have to get better. And it took me years to go on the inside, because let's face it, I went to meetings for a long time, still looking good, putting on the baseball cap, like fabulous. I'm busy. But
yes.
sometimes it penetrates and you have to feel feelings again, which is kind of hard.
Yes.
The hardest thing, the biggest thing, I mean, if I look back and say what this program gave me the ability to become authentic, like, and to really, really be who I am and and strive to continue to be who I can potentially be. Like that's it, because we grew up in this. And look, so many disclaimers. Our parents loved us. They created a great home life for us. They did the best they could. It was very, very plastic, right? Like even everything was like perfect. Like this had to be perfect. This had to be perfect. Because that's what they were taught. Like like so. We're so blessed to have this program to give us the tools to work through all.
It really was. I mean, I think for a lot of us growing up in that era, like so much emphasis placed on the outside and almost none on the inside. Like, it was like, how do you look? My mom would put us in these like friggin' sailor suits, and send us off to like church. And it was like, how do you look? It was never really like, how do you feel?
It's so true, isn't it? Like, I remember even saying to my kids, like, let's get up and let's get dressed. We got to go praise the goddamn Lord. Come on. And you better put on their best outfit. And
Look, this is embarrassing, but did you see that? I just happened to have it.
Oh my God. Look at them. Yeah. Look at them. Oh my God. Oh
That's
my God.
sailors right there.
They tried to get me in that picture and I was like, fuck off. I'm not dressing.
Yeah, Peter was the reason Mom talked to Peter about like, hey, we have a disease in our family is because he was an absolute lunatic. Like at the age of 3, 4, and 5, like you know how like with your children, like maybe I don't think so. Got it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Like, even though we all ended up with it, Peter, like he was like on, I don't know, like
that's a good point. That is actually a pretty good point. I had all the warning signs. Yeah.
Now wait a minute. Who gave you your first drink, Pete?
Oof. I think I supplied it to myself. I mean, I think typical bullshit.
But with your brothers, did you ever like when you were littler? Did they were like, come on?
My Uncle Dennis was the guy, and he had his own problems, but he gave me my first beer. I can remember that. My mom's brother, and then I Kevin had people over enough times where it was just kind of like, oh wow, they're doing this, let me do this. So like I drank myself, and it really wasn't. But you saw all the fun and the warmth that was around alcohol because it was always big parties and stuff. So for me, there were never any warning signs. It looked like a lot of fun. Yeah. And so any chance I got, Mike, at like a family party or something like that, I would sneak it, Yeah.
And Mike, were you always partying with Kevin?
It's funny because we worked at Smoky Joe's together, and he really was a little bit of a lone wolf. I mean, once we got to high school, he paved the way for us to do things, to be a part of things. He was off doing his own thing a lot. I mean, it was just kind of his nature, and he was just always running, from an early age. So not that much. And then with Pete, being 4 years older, and I coached him in football. I mean, is it weird science like Chet? Like, I've been accused of being of that big brother who was like, "Don't you drink? Like, what are you doing? You're an idiot." I called him by his football number for like 3 years. Like, what a doofus.
Yeah, no, but it was. That's all exactly how it played out. And I think with Kevin, he was always one of the reasons that he was such an interesting guy, because he was always doing something different and unique. And he really, I don't know, he and I never had any long discussions about this, how he felt as a kid, but he really did seem like he didn't really care what people thought. I'm sure he did. But yeah. I mean, I always go back to like, he was a guy who was, like, we talked about this, he was a football player. It was like 89, 88. And he decides to be the lead in the high school play. And somehow, that just wasn't like where the quote unquote popular people were going. And he did. And he made it quite an impact. He did a great job, and he didn't give a shit. And Mike, as you brought to my attention, other guys on the football team went out for the play after he did. So that's the kind of guy we were talking about, like really like a little bit of a Renaissance man back in the day, You like that,
Well, he
Mike?
had chutzpah, right? I mean, it's a Jewish word, but he had a lot of chutzpah, right? Because he was like, I don't really give a shit. I'm going to do what I want to do. And what anybody thinks, I don't give a shit.
Yes.
And in a sense, I think maybe it was always searching too, right? Like
Yeah.
always searching for that thing. He was. I've said before, he's a much deeper thinker than maybe I am, right? Like he's really, really book smart and intelligent. Um, I might not be that way. He's just, I really always admired him in that way. But yeah, I think he was always searching. I think he always loved the ladies too. And he knew that if he went to, if he was a football player and in the play, like it definitely expanded his network. So, I mean,
It's all about
true.
getting chicks at the end of the day, Biz. You know
I
that.
mean, right? Isn't that like how it
It's all
used to be?
about.
Like,
Well, tell me this. When did he get, how old were you guys when he got sober? And how old was he?
he got sober long. I don't know long after, but he got sober after Mike. Probably.
So he was 13 years. I'm
17.
16 and
Yeah, we'll
I'm
be
16 in
17.
like 8 months. Yeah,
Yeah.
coming up here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you want to talk about like getting your footing as the first sober person in an alcoholic household? Like it is beyond bizarre. I mean, it is. I can look back and laugh at some things. Like it's like Arrested Development, right? You're just like watching. You're Bateman watching these crazy things unfold. Like what? And I mean, it's like insane.
Like,
Michael, I didn't realize. Wait a minute, Pete. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I didn't realize you were the first one.
Yeah.
That must have been so, because obviously I've been seeing you for all these years. It's crazy. Are we even old enough to have this much time? But anyway, it's crazy to think that you were the first one. And oh
Yes.
my gosh, that must have felt so weird going home. I'm totally Jason Bateman.
Let me one quick example is there was a Christmas and Peter was really on the edge, right? And I'm looking at him going,
he tries to dress this shit up.
what? They're probably, and I have maybe 4 years, 5 years, I can't even remember. And I was never the kind of person to be like, everyone needs to be sober. Like that's not my game.
Right.
But like Pete was really pushing the envelope, right? Like out of control is maybe an understatement. And I say, and Dad pulls me aside before Christmas and he says, if you ruin this goddamn Christmas for any of us and do shit, it'll be your last Christmas alive with us. And I was like, I don't, Dad. He's like,
it goes back to the shame thing, Mike. And this is so interesting you mentioned this because I just thought of that. So I'm a year from getting sober now. I mean, I'm out of anything I could leverage against getting sober. And I came home. I had gotten a DUI in Charlotte, another one. So I took the train home to live with Mom and Dad. The idea was I was going to get sober. And I remember when it took the train from Charlotte. Like that's not a short ride. So I was like hoofing it basically. I got home and he picked me up at the train station. I remember he was like, no drinking like around the house. It wasn't like don't drink. It was kind of like he still wasn't quite, and I just think he had no clue. You know what I mean about how the whole thing works. He was just like, don't be drinking around the house. I remember being like shocked by that. Like, wow, like
because they did create these like Rockwell-esque Christmases. And honestly, I still love Christmas. And our Christmases were amazing. So I mean, maybe he wanted whatever it was. It was denial, but he was protecting those memories. Maybe it was the only good times he had as a child. I don't know, but like they were sacred to him. And if Pete was falling into something, knocking something over, like, and I were to be like, "Hey, Pete, are we going to help him?" They'd be like, "You and your sobriety, shoving it down our throats." I was like, "Okay, all right, okay."
How did you do it? Like a girl would be like, oh, I'm living, and they'd stomp their feet and they'd walk out and slam the door. But you just endured.
My dad was he was still a scary person. It still took me a long time to stand up to him. I mean, that was my own stuff I was going through.
Times when you had enough and you left. I mean, let's make like, and it was sad. I mean, he had to make a really hard decision to leave Christmas sometimes. Be like, I just can't right now. This is Pete screwed up. Pete's girlfriend screwed up. You know, it just was like mom and dad are they're enabling this behavior. Like really, as a sober alcoholic who's working on any kind of program, that is your sponsor might tell you you probably need to get out of that situation. You know, like it's just not.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, I left.
And that's, one of the things we always talk about is right is do you have to be there, right? And if you're there, like make an exit strategy and feel comfortable leaving when you do. And then there was also having children. I wanted them to spend time with the family, but I also didn't want them to be introduced to alcohol, the way I was, and to have it done thoughtfully and respectfully. So it was like, we got to get out of there and not let them see, the later antics of the night. Excuse me.
And would Kevin always come home from LA?
Until he and his wife Patty got real serious, then it was every other. But they were a big part of Christmas, and Patty's been a part of our family since they got married. Like
it was, and really to like talk about some juicy stuff. Like it was wild times before he met Patty. I mean, the moment he met Patty, Kevin's the way he comported himself totally changed. I mean, he was still Kevin, rock and roll. I mean, it's not like he sacrificed individuality or anything, but it was very clear that there was something different going on here. I mean, because he, like much like myself, like I dated a bunch of real bizarre people because I was bizarre. All right, to put it lightly. Kev, honestly, he never really copped to it. We would break his stones about it a little bit. He's the same way. I mean, he dated some women that couldn't hold a candle to his wife, right? But like, so he would bring these women home, and there would be fireworks. I mean, right? I mean, Mike, one time you guys got into a fight, and
it was just it was the insanity, right? Like, he brought home a girl, and she had all her own problems, and she wouldn't leave the room. It was like crazy, like wouldn't come down. Kevin's friend came to visit. It's just the bizarreness of an alcoholic family, like
just alcoholic madness, Yeah. I'm showing up with my girlfriend. The back window of a rent-a-car we have is blown out, punched out, because we have like a trash bag over it, and I'm like, hey, Merry Christmas, It's just like,
Peter, are we allowed? Do we talk about the trip home from Uncle Dennis's memorial, or is that the girl you were dating then?
You could talk about it. I don't care.
I don't care.
Peter was dating a woman who also charged a fee to entertain men, like high level men, like very expensive men. And we were at my uncle's, like who died of alcoholism and drug addiction, and it was a huge party. I'm sober, and Peter has definitely been crushing it at this party. We get back in the
Mike, you said something to jump in, and this was something that seeped in. Like when people tell you stuff, he's like, you were drinking like you were like somebody who was in pain, and I didn't think I was in pain.
Just killing the pain.
I was next to the keg, just like
nonstop. Yeah, and in the car ride home, I don't remember how, but things got funny always, and they got real heated. And at one point, I was always the bad guy, and I said, I'm like, Mom, Peter's girlfriend, like the one that you like think is so great, like she's a hooker, Mom. Like
hold on, you can't take that out. She's what
do I say?
Can't say that. I mean, we just can't.
She's an entertainer of.
I don't even know who I have no idea who this person is. By the way, so we have no idea. So this person, we have no idea. She lives in Sweden. It doesn't matter. She doesn't live in the West Country.
She was not like a prostitute. All right, like I get that. If she's probably like an escort, like seeking arrangement type stuff.
Whatever she was doing for her, we support her, and whatever she was doing to make an income. Right, that was her way of making an income.
I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that like. That was, in the inside moments of family, that's how you like point out how insane this life is right now.
That's what's going on.
And I'm trying to tell you guys, we're we are headed towards an iceberg right now, like full steam ahead. And you guys are going like, that looks clear. We're good. Speed up.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the truth. I mean, I can remember that conversation, and it was like Mike was just like, it was like mine was blown. And Tara, Mike's wife, is like, oh, like Mike's like, no, it's not okay. Like, it's not normal. It's like he's like, no, this is absolutely insane. And those are little. I always tell people that, like, oh, what should I say to somebody who's trying to get sober? Or like, Mike was very real, and he would drop off just real hard nuggets of truth. Like, you're drinking like you're in pain. Your girlfriend's an escort. Like, these are real things that you are living in. And I'm not going to say right that day I turned around and got sober, but those things, those seeds can start to grow a little bit, like sprout.
And I was going to say, but the most important thing that I want to mention about this whole thing is that he's your brother. And
Yeah.
when we are as sick as we are, our families of origin are like the people that for some crazy reason, right? We want to please them. We want their respect. We want to feel loved by them more than anybody else. And we're sitting here in so much pain, and nobody's like, you're like, wait a minute, you're telling me this, and oh my God. And those feelings rush up, and you're like, I don't even know what to do with these feelings. So fuck, get me another drink. Because it's
Yeah.
just, what do I do? How do I get off this bad train? I can't get off.
And I think, and you probably, as a sort of a certified interventionalist or whatever, like you're well aware of these things, but like it's about the tough love thing and whatever. I think that like that gets misconstrued, right? It's about delivering a message that's going to be heard, or that's going to seep in at some time. Like, if you're, when people say, well, I don't know, I'm just candid, I tell you like it is. I'm like, well, it's more like you're just frustrated or being a bully, because that's kind of the easy way, as opposed to picking the moment and saying the truth that's going to be heard and get in somehow. I think that, like, is your message going to get heard? Like, it doesn't matter what it is, or unless it's packaged some way that it's going to get across the finish line, or at least get in the door.
Exactly. And there's this thing that we're talking about, like, it's feelings. Like, all this stuff is feelings. I mean, your brother Kevin, that's what he did for a living, right? Prior to being a musician, he helped people. He was all about, let's talk about our feelings. And growing up where we grew up, we weren't really supposed to have feelings, right? You're supposed to stuff them. Wait a minute, we're supposed to look pretty. Get up, keep walking, and especially as men, right? You guys, especially, you're like, you're not allowed to cry. What are you talking about? You're a sissy. You need to be strong. You can't feel sad.
We had like polar ends of the spectrum for our of the for our dad. Like, never once asked me like, hey, your girlfriend from high school, like Elaine, like, how's that going? Or like, you really like her? Or like, not like, there was no conversations with any sort of layers to them. But mom wouldn't ask those things about us, but we were showered with this protective owner love, right? So the feelings there were overwhelming, and maybe not, delivered in a way that was healthy. I don't, again, like, all the love I have and all the things are from my mom. I just, it was all there, but it was in this raw, unfiltered kind of way as a mom, like, that, defined who she was in a lot of ways, like being the loving mother of these three children. So it was very, very bipolar for us, like, it was one way or the other.
One extreme to the next. It was. Yeah. And I think that Kev, just kind of having a little bit of emotional intelligence as a younger person, realized that, like, this is not normal. Like, this guy's always pissed, and this one's telling me how much she loves me, and there's like sunlight, and then there's a little bit of darkness, as he saw it. And it was, so I think, like, he kind of struggled with that, right, Mike? I mean, early on, I think he was like, this is insane.
Yeah. I mean, I think the oldest gets the, like, the unfiltered parent, like, who's still trying to figure out who they are. And I think that they definitely have the roughest go of it in a lot of ways. If it's a household predisposed to alcoholism, right, or whatever it might be, they have a rough go of it. And I think he just rebelled from the word go. Like, he just, he just wanted out. You know, he wanted out. He got the brunt of mental, physical, any sort of abuse. You know, so it was just, you know, he definitely had deeper scars than any of us.
But I never met him, but I've watched enough of his videos, and
You never met him. You never met him
I
at like
never met
you
no,
never saw him at a
I
dance or anything.
no,
No, because
nothing.
you were in St. Louis,
I was
right?
in St. Louis, and I'm a
Right.
little bit older than him. I'm
Okay.
2 years older than him. But I watched, okay, the outpouring when he passed away a couple weeks ago. I watched him when he was on stage, and he had this passion about him. And he was an artist, right? So as artists, we are all, that's a sensitive person, right? That's, we as artists,
Yes.
we feel like this thing that's like, and I'm not saying good, bad, but that's what makes a family. We all have these different things, the yin and the yang. Your parents with the yin, the yang. Your mom was sitting there trying to hold the whole thing together so it looked pretty because she so
Yes.
much wanted that beautiful present. I know that's what I wanted for my family. My family grew up, whatever. I'm not talking about myself. The reality is we all go through these things, and it's managing through and staying alive and staying afloat. And that's what he did. Like, he did self-preservation. So when he decided to get sober, did he call you, Mike?
So I lived in California for a couple of years, and I was not sober. He was trying to get sober. And then, you know, it got to the point where when I was sober for 3 or 4 years, he had been making several attempts to get sober. So he didn't really let me know what was going on until he was like 90 days in. And you
Okay.
know, at that point, it was kind of like, you know, let's see what you got, right? You know, let's put let's put rubber to the road. So that was really, it was later on. And then when he got a first year and he was working on his thesis for his master's, like, he really, I think he wanted to hit a year and stand tall. But you know, he did it like Kevin. Like, you know, he got sober, he quit smoking. He did this thing called the Catalina Classic, which is a paddle thing, which is like, it's the equivalent to a marathon. Wrote his thesis, like, did it all in his first year. You know, and you know, it's better than drinking or using drugs, but he also had to level out, you know, and get to a normal after that, you know. So,
And I think Mike, I think to what Mike's saying, and this is, I could be wrong. Like he finished his thesis, and I think he had a year, and I think he had a concert which wrapped all these things together. Right, Mike? Out in
yeah,
Hermosa, I'm pretty sure.
totally.
Yeah, and so it was a real celebration, but it's not like he went out and relapsed after that. If anything, he got more, you know, deeper into recovery because, you know, we talked to guys, especially when we were out there. That was one of the cool things about the memorial and going to that paddle out. Mike, I'd been to meetings with Kevin and Michael at this Alano house, like in the South Bay, in Hermosa, and that was awesome. And then Mike went to the Broxbury men's meeting with
This is
Kevin,
legendary.
and so many guys. And that's not being dramatic. So many guys and people too came up to us and like, I know your brother from sobriety. I know, you know, meetings with your brother. Your brother gave me a ride. Your brother. So he never really, and that's almost like the following of a tradition. He never ran around and was like AA or this or that. He was very proud of being sober, but he got his hands dirty in sobriety and in recovery, right? Like doing the deal, helping people, giving them rides, talking to people after meetings, you know, service commitments, all that shit, you know. And it's
Well,
like, because we always see the finished product.
so in the program that we practice, right? Like, our primary purpose is to stay sober and help another alcoholic, right? Now, the other side of that, and I believe firmly in this, and I think Kevin really was a model in practicing it, is service starting at home, you know, service starting with your family, you know, because it's the hardest when those people are right in our face to practice patience, restraint of pen and tongue, and, you know, to be of service to them. So if I can start there and then be of service to, you know, alcoholics, to the community, right? I think that's really, that to me is authenticity, right? And he struggled with being of service to our parents and worked very hard to come to a great place and tighten those relationships later in his life. As did they.
He worked really hard, and it was cool because, again, like he's this therapist. He's up on a hill, right? Like as far as like with the degrees and with the experience, but look, family and stress doesn't discriminate. Like he had all the hocus pocus and all the education, and he would come home and he could lose it like that with our parents. And it was
Well,
kind of like it showed over time. He actually had to spend time to be there, and then it got easier, and then it got better for him. But
Right.
Mike said it wasn't like overnight, even with all the education and everything.
like when your dad got sick and you had to
But
come home a
he
lot.
really wanted to. He wanted to have a relationship. He had a desire to make everything work, and to make it right is probably a little too dramatic, but he wanted to make it work, right?
Yeah, totally. I totally. I mean, he wanted to be a part of it. I think that really started his healing with both of our parents. Like being there, and I think, and Peter said it. It's kind of immersion can get you places, right? And if you come in and you're there for 4 days and you leave, right? So the first day, these guys would always be like, "Oh, it's great, we're having a great," and they're like, "Yeah, things aren't so tough." I'd say, "Hey, let's talk in 3 days, guys," right? And in 3 days, they're like, "These people are insane. Like mom and dad are," and I'm like, "Yeah." But then there's like you get past that and you stay for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and all of a sudden you're immersed in the family thing again, and you're able to work your program, get your routine down. And I think that was great. They got stuck at home one Christmas for like 3 weeks. Like the flights had all been canceled, and I think towards the end they were definitely like, "We got to get out of here." But they got to understand and they got to be a part of the process for an extended period of
That
time.
was, by the way, that was the first year that Kevin was sober.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the year before I got sober. I remember because we were all hanging out, and I knew I had to kind of keep it together because I was like faking being sober. So there were no like crazy outbursts. But yeah, he was sober the whole time. And that was, I think, speaks to what you're saying. It was pretty cool holiday season and Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys, and now to talk about Kevin, when did you find out that he was sick?
Well, we found out like the COVID was when he had his initial diagnosis, and I think he got Mike and I on like a Zoom call,
Yeah,
with his wife, yeah, Mike, he told us.
So it was like a 3-year process. He got diagnosed with melanoma, and he had radiation, and he was in remission. Then it came back again, and he had to have a large mass removed, and again did several rounds of radiation. And it got to the point though he had a full year of clean scans. And frankly, the kind of cancer he had, right, this melanoma, was always curable, right? We always knew it was going to be a journey, but it was curable. Even when it got close to the lymph nodes, and then it came back right before he died. He had a seizure, and he went to the hospital. And I was fortunate to be in San Diego picking up my oldest daughter from school, and we were bringing her stuff up to their place in Hermosa Beach, California. So we drove right there, and we're able to go to the hospital and spend time with him, and let his wife Patty get some free time. But when they said, "Look, you have a lesion on your brain. Again, we believe this is curable through radiation." Another seizure a week later, and he was dead like 6 days later. Like, so it went from clean scans, not being a life-threatening cancer at that point, to we still believe we can beat it, and then he was gone. So it really was. It wasn't a slow, long. We know he's going to die. It was very quick, very jarring. It was very difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine it still is.
Yeah, yeah. It's grief is like, it's just crazy. Every sort of emotion. And the fact that we've talked about this before, the three of us were able to live his last 11 years all sober together, 12 years sober together, was like just amazing. I mean, really, we all spent a lot of time together. I'd say we spent a lot of quality time together, more so than most brothers who live in the same town. Like in the fact that, because we would go to California, for twice a year. Super Bowl was one we always went, and we spend like 5 or 6 days together. And I mean, it was just joy. Every visit was joy filled and present. We were present. We laughed. They were just true gifts. And without sobriety, without all of us being sober, that does not happen. And all of us working a program, that does not happen. So in a sense, all of those beautiful moments, it hurts more because that relationship's gone. But also, I know that when he died, we got to see him before he died, and he was already nonverbal and really not necessarily present, I don't think. I didn't have anything left. I didn't have anything I needed to say to him. And he didn't have anything he needed to say to me or to Pete. Like, I knew that he loved me and was proud of me. And he knew that we thought he hung the moon and we were proud of him. Like, if that's not the greatest gift sobriety can give you, that I could drop dead tomorrow and my kids and wife and family and Pete would know, and mom, that I love them dearly. And, it's just an amazing gift that there's nothing left unsaid, because our program gives us a process to do these things and to say these things and to live in that moment. And it's not perfect, like I've had ups and downs with my sobriety, but we was at a time where we were all there, I think.
Yeah, there's something, and then one thing I'll say, just being the youngest, like, and as it applies to sobriety, you really can't, when you're really working a program, you can't fake it. Like, you have a vibe, you have an energy, you have something about you is changing. And so, I could have called Kevin and said, "Oh, I've got 5 years, I've got 10 years." I don't really think he would have landed. But when we spent time together and it was clear that all of us were working on this thing, it was pretty cohesive. And when it got crazy, it came back down to earth really fast, because we had tools and we kept each other accountable. But for me, the coolest pass I ever got was through sobriety, because I got to hang out with these guys because I was the real deal. You know what I mean? Like, Kevin, don't call me until you get 90 days. That's what he said to me when I was in rehab. He hung up on me. And so, like, I think, like, really that is just, I mean, sobriety is all I am. I have everything about me, around me, that's positive to thank. I have sobriety to thank for that. And my relationship with these two guys is the same exact thing. I didn't have to fake it. It was authentic, like you said, Biz, and it was cool.
It's just so, like, we all wish to have what you guys had. And your brother, like, we're here on this planet to give away, right? We're not here to hold. We're here to give, right? And we get one day, and we help anybody that's on the street. And your brother did that, like, on steroids, right? Like, I mean, you could see just from those pictures, like, all the people that he touched. And I bet some of them he probably didn't even probably remember. I mean, let's be honest. He's probably be like, wait, I don't remember that person is, because we all get like that. But he affected so many. And it's like, how proud you both must feel. Like, that is my brother. That is my big brother.
Overwhelming. When he was, that rock star in high school and playing local, like, and in the play, I idolized him. Like, he was my guy. Like, he was on a pedestal. And then I saw him unfold, right, and really sink into drug addiction, as I was at the same time, but he was no longer that idol I looked up to. And then to see him, like, rise from the ashes, like, it was, I mean, I get goosebumps talking about it now. Like to see your idol go through hell and come back and then do what he did. Look, when somebody dies, right, we all say great things about them. Like, that's and I think that's right. You want to focus on what the good things. But when you really look at his body of work, like, it was all authentic, and there's no more greater thing, or well, I can embody his life, than two different parents came up to me and said, one was the father of a son, and said, 4 years ago, my son was dealing with addiction and suicidal, and your brother saved my son's life. And I said, well, he would say he didn't, but he would say that he gave the tools. And they said, yeah, but we know he saved his life. And then a mother whose daughter similarly said the same thing. I mean, those things, they leave you speechless. Like
I had
one
a guy say the same thing. Different guy. Same thing. I never met your brother, but I just wanted to come here to celebrate him because he saved my son's life.
it,
Yeah, and Kevin would tell you, right? Like, it wasn't all unicorns and rainbows. It was ugly. Even sobriety was, right, for a while, and like even recently, it wasn't like perfect for him, battling with all the health stuff. I mean, that sucked. I
yeah.
mean, we would go out there and we'd be hanging with him, and the last night or whatever, we'd be like, "Oh, Kevin like ate too much food, or he's grumpy, whatever." And I remember asking because we used to say when Kevin ate too, after he ate, he would be like a real bitch. He'd be like, "We're
He,
only
he,
great." Yeah.
he
Um,
would,
and
we all love, some is good, more is better, right? That's his
Right.
philosophy.
but I asked Patty, his wife, I forget how it came up, but I was like, maybe I was like, "Oh, he's crabby," or and she's like, "He's got another treatment tomorrow," and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh," and I was like, "What is?" I was like, "Is he like?" She's like, "Yeah, he'll sort of check out sometimes," and I'm paraphrasing, but when we have these, when he has to go for these treatments the night before, he's just like, "Who's pumped about that? It sucks,"
Oh my
you
God,
know.
the fear. Can you imagine the fear that was in him? All these feelings. And you guys, so nobody talks about death, right? Nobody talks about how to mourn. No one, no one, no one. And so here you guys are going through this, and Pete, you're on TV, all this crazy fancy stuff that you do, and Mike, you're like an amazing dad. And how do you hold it together knowing that you guys lost your dad? Now you've lost, I mean, and your poor mom. I just send so much love to your mom because you never want to have to be, what she's gone through. But you guys being like, this is happening. How are you doing it? And what would you say to other guys or women that are out there that have lost somebody and and this is not like, as you said, there's a lot of families that aren't close, but you guys were a unit. So it
Yes.
was like your quarterback is no longer here. So what happens when that happens, and how do you deal with it as guys? I've got to stop crying.
Yeah. It's still happening, right, Pete? I mean, it's still happening. And busy. Our mom had a massive stroke in January, and at first we didn't think she was going to make it, and now she is really doing well. You put the
Piece of
last
work.
couple years together. It was rough, but you know, I, for me, right? It's about, if I get up and I take some time, like don't on my and I'm not perfect at this, but if I can, at my worst day, if I can walk outside for 20 minutes, right? And then I can come back and I can, reflect for 10 or 15 minutes and go over things I'm grateful for. I have a shot at being present and still being of service and grieving, thinking about, Kevin would say you got to lean into the emotion. And I think about that a lot. Like sometimes I'll just be really angry and I just let that sit there for a minute and I think about him. I get really sad. And I just I let that wash over me and it sucks. I mean, I spent my whole life like getting away from feelings. And the beautiful thing like, people don't know how to handle, like when they see you, like, hey, one guy I saw the other day, he goes, hey man, really sorry. That must have been awful. Like, better now? And I'm like, really, like, oh dude, I'm like, they don't know what to say.
So dumb. Yeah.
Every little note, like, I think what I learned is like anybody just going, hey, love you, thinking about you in a text. Like I know Pete and I with our sister-in-law, like I just want her to know that we're thinking about her. And my mom, like, love you, big hugs, like just a voice message. Hey, we were sitting here last night, like me and my daughter and her cousin, and we're like, hey Patty, we're all here. We just thinking about you. We love you. We're sending love from the Jersey Shore. And I think those things go a long way because they went a long way for me, right? And at the end of the day, the program, teaches us my program, our program, we got to suit up and show up, right? And it's it's not easy, right? There's awful days. I'm definitely been in a little bit of a fog and funk lately, but the thing about it is I can identify that like the weather, it'll change. Like it will get better. And the program allows me to see that because it will. I'm always going to be different because of this experience, but it's going to change. And Kevin always said that, like, it's going to change. When you're on a run, baby, like, oh, by the way, the bad news is this will change too, like that's the one thing people talk about. Like, this too shall pass. Well, guess what? Your good mood is going to fucking pass too, right? They don't say that when you're in a great mood usually, right? Like, but that's the thing. And sorry to go on, but like, it's such a day-to-day thing for me. I have to do my process, or I've skipped a couple days here and there, and like I'm not my best me at all, and then I have to go and make a lot of amends later on.
I mean, Mike said it. Just you show up, and people. There's so many. Luckily, being sober enough, you go to a meeting where somebody's like, "Yeah, I'm here today, and my dad died an hour ago," and you're like, "Oh, that's what you do." And so that's what I did when my dad died. I mean, like we all sat on a Zoom and watched my dad drift off. Kevin too. It was October 2020, and I went to my home group. I mean, it was like I think my dad died at like noon or a little before, and then I was at the meeting maybe 10 minutes later, something like that. It's all I know to do. And I think it's like to process, we're lucky we have this exclusive opportunity through recovery. I mean, people have support groups and stuff, but for ours, it's like built in. You just kind of show up, and be willing. And so, and honestly, Mike has been a huge help. Somebody that's exactly like me is going through exactly what I'm going through. That is a bit of a gift, really. I mean, it is. And I think we've gotten through it together.
Yeah.
It's but it hurt. It's painful. It hurts. It sucks. And that's the one thing you asked what you would say to somebody is it really hurts, and there's nothing you can do. As far as that visceral pain is concerned, I'd never felt anything like it. When my dad died, I was kind of like, well, it's about time. I've been very lucky at it. I hadn't had any loss. Then Mike mentioned mom's stroke, and that was like very jarring. And then this is just debilitating. But, everybody has their own path to walk. I think, honestly, people are like, well, how are you doing? And I think, well, shit, how's my mom and my sister, Patty, doing? Like, that is who, I mean, so that's who I think of. I mean, really, like, there's always it's weird, and maybe it's my way of not leading in, like, shit, somebody always has it worse, so that's probably not the healthiest way. But it's kind of how I think.
Busy. We've been in California twice in 2.5 weeks, and both times, we had to get my mom out there, right? Who, post stroke, it can be challenging, and then we're in these hotel rooms all adjoined, and two different occasions, like we've been helping each other out. Like, well, I mean, I was at one point ready to I was ready to kill everybody in the hotel, starting with my family. And that's talk about being of service, right? And Pete's like, dude, you gotta step out. Like we've gotta lead with love. We've gotta lead with love. And I'm like, well, fuck you and your love. I don't want to lead with that.
And then 2 weeks later, in a hotel down the road in the same community, we're back out there for the memorial, and I'm losing my shit. People want to do all this stuff. I'm like, we're not doing anything. Like, we're not going anywhere. We've had a long day. And Mike and his daughter are like, okay. And his daughter comes up with a plan like, how about we just do this and that, and then we'll go to dinner. And Uncle Pete, you can chill the fuck out. At this point, dinner, while they were all at dinner, I wasn't going to go to dinner because nobody talked to me about it. And it's just been such a long day. So at this point now, I'm just sitting in my hotel room, like staring out the window while everybody's at dinner, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I just need to go.
Yeah.
But it's like we're very lucky because I know, if I didn't have the tools that I have, I would just go with that. And probably get and if I don't have these tools, I'm probably still drinking. So I'm like, I'm not going to dinner. Fuck you. I go get drunk, and like I go get an 8-ball, and like I ruin the memorial the next day. Like, that's a real possibility.
Yeah.
We're in this world now where it's kind of like you don't even necessarily need to get talked off the ledge. You just kind of get like looked at a certain way, and you're like, oh, okay, like I'm really like I'm drifting here, you know.
I want to ask you guys, how do you think spirituality has helped you through this time? Because I know you guys are very spiritual. I know you were raised going to Catholic church. You went to Catholic schools your whole life. How has your spirituality helped you during this time? You start first, Pete, and then Mike.
I'll just say, like, um, I've said this before. Kevin really helped me because I had a girlfriend who her mother died tragically on January 1st, like on New Year's Eve, and I was driving up to see her. A wonderful girl. Like, I was going up to see her. It was like awful. I was like, but I was going right to see her. Her mom just died. And I called Kevin. I was like, what, how do I do this? What do I do? And he told me he's a therapist. This is 3 years ago. He told me exactly what was going to happen, basically, and how to conduct myself and what to expect, which was anything, you know? And I was able to use those tools through his death, right? And the spiritual component of that is he's like been with me so much through this. And the fact that we have a spirituality, like a foundation, like I was able to take something like that, a situation where, okay, Kevin told me how to handle this and I went up there and did my best. And now all of a sudden he's talking to me again. And it's like, oh, there's Kevin, and you hear his voice. And then I'll be honest with you, you fucking see a cardinal and you're like, there he is, you know? And if that's crazy, like, I don't give a shit. Like, because guess what? Like, I feel a connection. Obviously, his physical presence is gone, but I see him and feel him all over the place. And nobody can take that from me. And so it's a gift to be able to tap into his presence and all the things that he taught me, whether he said them to me or not, just by going about my day, having that spirituality and if I don't tend to that spirituality, then I'm not seeing him, right? It's just like, are you going to see signs in your life? Well, no, if I got my head in the clouds or if I'm buried it in the sand and I'm pissed off because I don't want to go to dinner, I'm not seeing anything. So it's based on trying to stay spiritually fit. And then when I do that, all the gifts come in with it, you know?
That's a great answer, Pete. And I think, one of your podcasts, I think maybe the last one or the one before that, you were talking about a higher power. And
Is this Elizabeth or me?
What, not you, Pete. I'm talking about business.
Well, there you go.
Shout out. Busy living.
All right, Biz, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm the only one of the three people here who don't have a podcast.
So we're not talking about.
Now you need to get one.
To me, it's very hard not to believe there's something greater than myself. I mean, just in everything, in like something like nature, in the energy of community, right? Of AA, of all of it, right? And I don't necessarily believe in the Catholic God that I was raised in the Catholic environment, but I believe in something bigger, loving, and I can conceptualize that when I look at Kevin, right, and that eventually I think I'll say, boy, 52 years, like, and he died on really firm spiritual footing. And the way my relationship was and everything he did for the community, like, that's 52 years is when he was supposed to go. Like, he did everything he was supposed to in his time on this planet. And it's hard to feel that, right? But I believe that I'll be okay with that someday. And I think that's spirituality, right? To kind of question it sometimes, like, why? But then you look at like children who have cancer and this is happening to, and like, perspective, right? We're spirituality, gives me the perspective of going, okay, like, we choose to focus on the joyful moments, and there has been so much beauty. Like, the whole service in Hermosa Beach was the most beautiful thing. The sense of spirituality there was palpable. It was amazing. So, like, it's there, but it's that belief that this, like, I'll believe at some point that he did what he was supposed to do on this earth. That for me has been the spirituality of it. I've always admired people who are very firm in their belief of how they were raised at God, and they can go, well, I know there's a heaven and I'm going to go there, and that gives them strength, and that's beautiful. And mine's a little different than that, but there's definitely something bigger than us, And yeah, I believe he's around. But it's going to evolve. I know the way I feel about that will evolve a little bit. But I'll always believe that that there's beauty somewhere, everywhere, and I got to look for it. And that's kind of where my faith comes from, I guess, or what it is in a sense. But it's definitely guided me through this, right?
I want to say one more thing as far as like what Mike said and the spiritual part of this. Like before I came here today, and I had no plans on thinking about him or whatever, but we were I think we were on a meeting once, and he was on a Zoom meeting that we were on, and we were talking about people that say things to you, derogatory things, negative things, and really it comes out of their mouth. It doesn't hit you. Like there's still a space between you and those words. And Kevin described it like this. I think he had a sponsor once or a therapist once who said, so somebody said something bad and you take that and you stick that knife in yourself. He said, it's basically like somebody's walking around with a tray of poison. He said, here, you want some? And you'll take it and you'll stick it in yourself. You have a decision whether you're going to let those negative words and that shit penetrate you. That is real. Like he left me with that. Like I thought about that this morning in regards to something else totally different. Like, so that is a spiritual journey that he's on with me that will never end. Like he really is. Like I like to have him with me in that regard is just so cool. And that literally happened right before I got here. And it's not like, oh, Kevin just died, let me think of him. It's like, no, I think about my brother all the fucking time. Like this came up. I think about Mike all the time. Like I would always think about, like there was just so much stuff that would come up and the three of us would text together. The last text I sent the group, the three of us, was fucking the anniversary of the Joni Loves Chachi wedding was like one morning. And that just reminds me of them. And so it was like 40 years since this. And I sent it out in the picture and Kevin laughed and Mike ignored it. But like that was, but all that shit makes me think of them. So anyways, I feel like he's always with me in so many different ways.
Well, I want to say two more things, and then I'm going to let you guys go. One thing is yesterday's, I don't know if you guys read the Daily Reflection yesterday, but it talked about experience, strength, and hope, right? And we learn from our experiences, right? That's how we share. That's how we talk to our sponsees. That's how we learn, right? And who would have thought that when you dealt with this thing 3 years ago, that God, whoever our higher power is, was getting you ready. Like we walk through all these experiences just so we can get to the next place. And we have the tools in our toolbox that hopefully somebody has given us. Because I remember going into the room so many times being so jacked up on something and somebody sharing about whatever I'm worried about, right? And you're like, wait, who told them that I was going through this? But that's when we learn the tools, how to manage life, right? How to get through this thing we call life sober in the best way we can.
Totally. Well, I always say to my sponsees, like, hey, you're going through something now that you're going to be able to share with somebody who's struggling. So make a note of that. And, my sponsor says to me, hey, what you're going through right now, like you're going to be able to help somebody out, right? Wait, tell me someplace else you get that, right? Like, where do you get that? Where one of the guys on one of the meetings that Peter and I attend always says, like, every answer I need is in these rooms somewhere. And I believe that, I really do. And that's experience, strength, and hope, right? And it's just crazy. And if you're in a meeting and you're struggling and you put your hand up and you share about what you're going through, isn't there a chance that someone's going to come up to you after the meeting, and say, hey, I went through this, last year with my older son, and he was struggling with marijuana, and here's how we handled it. It didn't work. Try this, and it was like, that's awesome. Like, it's amazing. It's helped me with major parenting things, it's great. And actually, so my daughter's mother, my oldest daughter, her mother and I are not together. We have a really solid relationship, but anytime something big has come up in her life, she actually goes to me, not because of me, but she knows that I have this program, and I'll come back and say after a day, look, let's handle it this way. Let's what if we try it this way? And she'll go, okay, I think that'll work. Like it's just amazing. She respects the program and sobriety so much because she's seen what it's done for me and for her daughter. So there's experience, strength, and hope for you.
It's so amazing. And I have to go to Kevin for 1 second and just say it's so awesome that you guys have his new album out. And now you get to listen to that and you can share it with people and you have him. Like he's there. You can just turn on and
you can put it in the show notes of this episode.
I will put it in the show notes. And I will also say that for you guys, like in your kids and then your grandchildren, you can be like, here's Uncle Kevin, and just go to a video on YouTube.
Oh,
and there he is. And it's so cool. It is so, and that's like this. Like this will be here long after we're here. Like it's like, look it, this is where we were.
And I told him there was the song "Ooh Baby." It was the first video he released, and I love the song. And the song it's on the new album. But the video, I was like, dude, you're not in the video, all but like a couple glimpses. He's like, dude, nobody wants to see a 50-year-old guy playing the guitar. He's like, I got to know how to sell it. It's like I was like, I disagree. I was like, that's fine. He's like, and that's what he told me. I was like, I disagree, but fine. Yeah, so that's like a negative. I was thinking like, you do put that video on and it's his video, but I wish he was in there more.
I'll say this, and I'm working through it. It's not my favorite thing to sit and listen to one of his like slower songs or a slower cover song. Like it, I love his music. I know that if I do that, I'm gonna definitely be reflective for a period of time. So, I'm still working on that.
You're protecting yourself, right? A little bit.
Yes, I am. Yes,
hey, yo, Biz, I'm going to ask you a question now. You've
been
open with your family.
Yeah.
Just the struggles and the addiction in your family, and not everybody has gotten it.
My my children family, or my family of origin?
Your family of origin. Yeah.
Okay.
So, what do you see, like it is pretty crazy how the three of us have been able to be sober.
And we have the exact opposite.
Yeah. And I think I see that. I think part of your emotion to all this has got to be related to like, you see the potential, right? Of what
I'm so envious, and I hate that because it is a deadly sin, right? Envy and jealousy and all those feelings. And it is, it's like, I feel like I wish we had it. And if I could make my family like this, I'd pay $1 billion. I'd do whatever I could. And we haven't gotten there yet. And yet being an operative word. And, for me, I just tried to how the fuck did God let me get out? I just don't know how blessed I was to get out. And, my kids, kind of like Mike was describing, like I couldn't go to Christmas morning. And my mom's like, why are you leaving? And I'd be like, I am trying to tell my kids that it's not okay to smoke pot. Okay. Yeah. I just don't think it's a really good idea. They're in their teenagers. I don't want them to smoke pot. And I'd be like, we're leaving. And they'd be like, I can't believe you're leaving. And I'm like, well, I have to. And then I stayed away for a lot of times. I mean, my mom died during COVID, and I was here in Florida, and my sister's like, get your fucking ass up here. And I'm like, well, for one, it's COVID. And for two, I was so scared. And I talked to my sponsor, and she's like, well, do you have a bunch of armed guards to go with you there? And I was like, no. And not only that, but I have kids that drink, like my kids drink, right? And you guys know that they drank, they've smoked weed. I've had them do everything. And now nobody really does. I mean, they do it a little bit, but Henry can't, because he's going to get busted and he can't work for the government if he ever did it or whatever. And so my kids, Henry turned 21 at that, like right before my mom died. And I was like, I'm having, I had all these kids in Fort Lauderdale because there was no COVID, because I live in Florida. We have no COVID.
No COVID.
And Henry was like,
Texas,
right,
yeah.
Exactly. It's like there was no COVID. And Henry was like, well, I want my friends to come and we're going to go to the nightclub. And I was like, I can't take away him being 21. So of course he went to the nightclub, and he was like, I was like, how is the COVID at the nightclub? He's like, 10 o'clock, mom, COVID. 2 a.m., no more COVID. I was like, Henry. So, but for having a family that doesn't have like to think that you could aspire to be what you guys have and will continue to have, is something to be admired and to cherish, you guys, to be really grateful for that. And that time that you had with Kevin was like amazing. Like
Amazing.
how blessed are you that you had it? Because this disease that we have of alcoholism is the number one killer of families. It is a $55 billion business in the United States. We haven't done much to change how we're treating people. I just wrote a letter to the governor and one of our potential presidential nominees about how we're treating alcoholics today. And, and I live in the Mecca. I live in Delray. So I live around all the rehab facilities. And it's just really, really, really sad. So as yin and yang as your parents were, some chemistry that went on in that house in Rosemont, Pennsylvania, gave you guys the ability to be vulnerable, to reach out for help, to see that your mom might have been a little ashamed, but you were like, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway. And you stood out there, and the three of you do today. And he still does. He might not be physically here, but your brother's mark will never die.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to look at it. You put it really, really great there. One thing, and I think, and Pete will agree to this, the whole time, whenever we were together, we would say, can you believe that we're like sober for this? We never took it for granted. And that is like, that's what we get taught, right? And it was just almost every time we were together, we'd be like, can you believe this? Like, we're so lucky.
To let you know that it wasn't always like unicorns and rainbows. Like I said, I was like, Kevin, we're miracles. He's like, dude, we're not miracles. He broke it down like why we were miracles. I was like, fuck you, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like it was at your house, Mike, like 2 or 3 years ago. He's like, dude, we're not miracles. All right. Let me break it down.
The greatest thing about being together with your family, one of the greatest things being sober was you actually regress back to like those pre-drinking days into those roles, right? So it's like there is an innocence there of three boys growing up together with Kevin like telling us how to do everything.
Like, you remember he was cooking on the grill and he dropped like a hamburger and he put it back on and we were like, dude, what the fuck? And he was like, it doesn't. Like,
you're fine.
Like, yeah, I was like, even he would admit in a different setting that was ridiculous, but it was us. He was like, oh, whatever, dude, it's fine.
Yeah, just shut up. Yeah. I mean, it was great. And then we also called him on the carpet where not a lot of people, out there in the community would, because he had built such this like reputation. Yeah. Like, oh, there's Kevin. And we're like he would walk, it's like pedestrians first there, right? I mean, he would walk across the street like dare the car not to slow down and stop. Like this. We're like, dude, easy with this strut. Like, oh my, like, come on, dude, relax. Like, Jesus.
I want to ask you guys, this is your last question. I've had you guys here for almost over an hour and a half, I think.
Oh.
What? It's a holiday. It's a holiday. And everybody that's out there, we're wearing red, white, and blue. This isn't coming out till tomorrow morning, but we're wearing red, white, and blue, and we didn't do this on purpose. It's so crazy, but I'm so patriotic and I love it. America first.
Jesus.
I miss you, buddy. It's so great to see you in here.
I love you guys. I love you guys. I haven't changed much. I'm pretty much the same. I'm just down here in the South. Come down South. Come on down.
I love it. So awesome.
I was just in Dallas, actually, with Henry. I was driving with Henry to New Mexico.
Oh, yeah. To art class.
I went to art class. Exactly. And Henry's working at whatever. He's working in New Mexico. I'm not allowed to say where he is because it's all top secret. But anyway, I want you guys to end this with this. I want you both to tell me one thing about Kevin that nobody maybe knows, that's funny, that you carry with you all the time. That's funny. That's a funny Kevin.
I'll say this, and not many people know. I just thought about it. I actually kind of spilled the beans when we were at the concert, but for whatever reason, when Kevin we were at the memorial, and I was like, they started to play his music, and I really started to cry. And Kevin had this fucking Kermit the Frog shirt that he wore all the time. He thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I have so many memories of Michael and Kevin. Those are my warmest memories as us as kids. And Mike and Kevin got into a fight, and it was a real scrap. But Kevin's Kermit the Frog shirt ripped. Kevin was probably like a sophomore, junior in high school, like cool enough. And Kevin was like, dude, you ripped my fucking Kermit the Frog shirt. And it was like kind of ripped and like hanging off of him. And he was just so disgusted with Mike. I remember him walking up the staircase, like looking down, like, fuck, like looking at his ripped shirt. And I just remember when I thought about that, this past week, and I was like, God, I love that Kermit shirt. I mean, there was so much stuff. One more thing about Kevin he did that Patty could tell you and other people could tell. He did this thing when he would sleep. He would grab his fingers would go back and forth like this, right? Like he was playing this, people say it's the smallest violin in the world playing for you, like that thing. And he would hold on to his pillow with the other hand, and then he would do this like sucking thing, like he was a Martian calling on his other Martians to come down and save him. Like it was, and he did it all the time. He did it till right, Mike?
I actually have a picture of it when I was out there. So I actually had like these two neck surgeries done, and I had them done in California. He referred this doctor to me. It was amazing. So I had them done out there, and then both recoveries, I was chilling at their house for a week each time. So again, so blessed to have this time with them just in the last 6 months. And we were on a Zoom meeting, and I got on his bed next to him, and he was doing it. He's like, so of course I take a picture and send it to Peter right away. I'm like, look at this fucking loser. Like,
so
still a baby.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mike, what's yours? That was mine.
Well, I mean, God, that's such a great question. I mean, I have said this before, but like, he was the king of saying ridiculous things to us, and I'll like, for like, he wanted us and everybody to think he was like so tough and like. So one day Pete was talking about fights and getting a fight with somebody, and he's like, Kevin, have you been in any fights? And Pete, and his response was, dude, I've been in more fights in the days you've been alive. And he forgot.
This is not that long ago.
He forgot who his audience was.
Yeah.
We're like, dude, that's not true. Like, no. Like,
and then Mike would always say Kevin was on it. We'd be like, hey, what happened then, Mike, when like bus driver got mad at you, like back in like 1984? And Mike would be like, well, I do remember Kevin on the corner of Meadowood and Browning smoking a cigarette with a leather coat on.
Just waiting to beat someone's ass as they walked by. Like, we're like, no, dude, that's not, no, you have not been in that at all. Or we were talking about Entourage.
You just described Judd Nelson in the Breakfast.
That's exactly right. That's what he was to us, man. He was like, he was that big brother, he was that thing, that mysterious kind of like, that was him. And he wore pajama pants for his last 2 years in college, like, and it became like a cool thing. I don't know, like the dude just fucking had it, man. Like, it's just crazy. He had that vibe. It was, I can look back, man. He was just a great big brother, but a better man, a better uncle. Like, to watch him like interact with my children, he had an amazing relationship with all of my kids, my stepson too, but with my oldest daughter, because I wasn't with her mother, I'd bring her out there every year. We'd go on a trip to visit Kevin and Patty, and we'd stay there for like 6 days, and they got to have such a great relationship, and it's unbelievable. The other side of that was, the pain. She was devastated, and to watch grief through your child's eyes is pretty tough. Not another thing to learn to deal with, but he just touched so many lives, and he was such a great big brother, like it was awesome. He still is awesome.
And he always will be. And you guys touch, you look at Pete, and he's doing the payoff. Like before we started recording, I mean, I remember when he was first getting sober, and he'd come over to my house all the time, and he loves to go into my refrigerator and we eat my food, because he always did. And he was always like he was at home. He's like, which I loved,
you that is you though. You made your house home.
It's always home.
Yeah.
And you'd come home, you'd come over and you'd sit there and you'd be eating and you'd be like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do with my life?
You have that special, like Mike, Mike knows, like just next level quality where like Biz is a person who you could stop by our house, you could pop in, you could hang, you could eat a little food, you could talk about cool shit, recovery. And she's so interesting, had so many interesting things to say. Like, you know, you never know what she'll say. You've got it all. Like there's a lot. There's a great, and I don't like pop in anywhere. It was a great, like, and yeah, and you helped me through so many things and, you know, my evolution. And I do think, and we'll kind of go back. My last thing is I'll end where we started. Kevin wanted that sober, not ashamed shirt.
Mm-hmm.
And he wore it at a big show. And he moved me to start this podcast about sobriety. Like when I was worried about it, like it's all this, like, so at the end of the day, if you can take anything from this, if you're struggling, whatever, like be fucking sober and who cares? It's one of the fucking coolest things out there you could possibly do. And I love the fact that Kevin was open with it and that we're able to be open with his sobriety about it. You know, in this stage, because that's what he would have wanted. And he was, I know it's air quotes, whatever. He was one of the coolest fucking people out there. And he was sober. So if you're thinking that getting sober isn't any fun, that's just another mind fuck. You know, it's just you're keeping yourself sick. Because guys like him, I mean, they're still are, and it's amazing. Like, you know, the people around us that are sober, we have no idea. That's why it's cool. That's why your project Biz has always been cool about being out there in the stigma. Yeah,
such a great message, and really, Busy Pete said it, but you embody that loving kindness. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you really do, and joy. You know, if you can do what we do along this journey and do it, you know, joyfully, like that's attraction, and you do that amazingly. And your podcast is, you know, helps so many people. So it's really awesome. It's awesome to be asked to be on this, you know, and share some time with you.
Well, I'm so glad you both said yes. And,
man.
you know, being sober and not ashamed and getting busy living sober, it's all about being able to walk through these things that we go through. Because in life, we all have to walk through these tough things. And if you're listening, as you heard, these guys both said they're dealing with they just dealt with their dad, their mom, and all this stuff, and they're staying sober. And they're staying sober and they're feeling the feelings. And we all know it fucking sucks when you're going through it. It sucks. But don't give up, right? Don't ever give up.
No,
there's always hope.
Always hope, right?
Without question. With the joy cometh in the morning.
Exactly, right. And if you guys want to reach out to either of them, I'll give you, send the email to me and I'll forward it to them. How does that sound? Please. Do you guys have anything else you want to say before we get off here?
Oh, I love you. This is like, I can't tell you how fulfilled I feel.
Yes.
And I didn't feel that way before this. So it fucking, you work, recovery works, and it's just, to be able to do this and to talk to you guys openly about something like this is a very, I'm lucky to have an opportunity like this.
Aren't we? Yes. Isn't it crazy that we changed those words in our vocabulary? It's like, I have to do this. Instead, we get to say, I get to do this. Man.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it. And that's, you know, what's funny is, you know, when you're asked to do things like we're taught, you say yes, right? And there's some things that are easier to, like this was an easy one. Like, I mean, just easy to say yes to do this. And to Pete's point, like, I feel better, you know, just sitting here talking with you guys, and my day is going to be better. And that's just awesome. I like Pete said, you know, love you, Busy, and I'm just so humbled that you want us to be on this and share some time with you.
Of course, anytime. You guys better keep in touch. If you're listening, please reach out. You can reach me at Elizabeth, ELIZABETH, at elizabethchance.com. And until next week, keep getting busy. Oh, by the way, happy 4th of July. Happy 4th of July.
4th, sober, not ashamed.
Sober, not ashamed. Go enjoy those fireworks. Eat some hamburgers. Have some desserts. Love you guys. Until next time, keep getting busy. Living sober.
That was great, Biz.